Hello, welcome to the Art Channel. In this film, we're visiting a new site-specific project in Westminster Hall in the heart of Parliament. The artist Jorge Otero-Pailos has made a cast of the east wall of this historic building in latex.
This is made possible with support from ArtAngel, which is an organisation based in London, been here for 30 years, and it helps artists to produce creative, ambitious, large-scale, temporary pieces, crucially outside of gallery settings.
In 2009, I saw a work by Jorge Otero-Pailos at the Venice Biennale, which was seemed to be the sort of cast of the surface of a wall at the Doge's palace. And I later on, about 2010, I was introduced to him by a mutual friend and remembered the piece that I'd seen, and he explained what it was, and he explained his relationship with Ruskin, the fact that he was a conservationist and an artist, professor of preservation at Columbia University, and he said Westminster Hall was the other historical building that Ruskin was interested in. Did you know that Westminster Hall is being cleaned for the first time in 200 years? I said, I didn't. I've never been to Westminster Hall. And he said, well, neither have I. So we went together around 2011 and began then to form a relationship with the Parliamentary Estates Directorate, who are responsible for the fabric of the building. And then little by little, as we worked out how to retrieve the latex that was being taken off the walls as the cleaning took place, we retrieved it, we worked out how to piece it together. We then also in parallel worked out how to piece together a network of relationships across the Palace of Westminster with a broad range of stakeholders who all had to be confident and supportive that we knew what we were doing and that it was desirable.
So walking along between the wall and the cast taken from it, from the artist, this amazing latex record of all the dust, all the pollution, all the years of history here, you can't help but bring your own history into it, and it's a new way to look at Westminster Hall. The Ethics of Dust, this title taken from Ruskin's 1866 work, which really talks about modern ways to conserve, to clean buildings. So the artist coming from a conservation perspective and actually saying that he works at the intersection between art, preservation and architecture.
It's interesting because this project in a way began my practice of cleaning buildings as an art practice, but it didn't happen right away. So there were a lot of other projects that happened in the process of this one happening. It's the most monumental work that I've done, so it's a change of scale for me. But every speck of dust has its own story. It's funny because when it's on the wall, it is in a way the wall, and we tell the story of the great events and the great political figures that have gone through this building. And then the minute that the dust came off the wall, and then it began to sort of tell its own story, and the dust is everybody else's story. It's everybody participated in making it, and so for me it's really interesting to have this, on the one hand the plaques of the great political figures, and on the other hand this more general story. It's also a longer period of time in a way.
There are many ideas here, aren't there? Thinking site-specifically about the extraordinary history of this building that dates back to 1099. It's 917 years old. And so there is this accumulation of history that's gathered on the surface of grime and soot from the fires that would have been lit here. And the latex sheet casts the wall. It becomes a double and a duplicate, but at the same time it's clinging to this pollution that the artist refers to as a form of heritage. It's an interesting idea that grime can be of importance and significance. So history is embedded in the latex sheet.
Yeah. And it is an interesting relationship. Here we have somebody who works in conservation, is interested in the history and the life of buildings and what pollution can do to our world, pulling out this pollution, not getting rid of it, keeping it within the latex for us to look at. And I think he's very interested in the idea of acknowledging it, and it is part of our modernity. It's a testament to what we've done, to our recent history.
You know, I learned a lot about British history.
Right.
But I also learned a lot about the history of parliamentary democracy around the world, and that, you know, this is one of the origins of it. And I think that's really something quite amazing, you know, to be in the place where what we take for granted started.
And inevitably, we're aware of history unfolding today. Recently we've had the European referendum, debates about British national life, and so this operates rather like a kind of tabula rasa into which people project their expectations and hopes. But at the same time, of course, the artist is making us aware of this legacy of history, of all the extraordinary events that took place in this hallway, including the trial of Charles I before he was executed, and also the great and the good lying in state here, which included Winston Churchill.
I think it's interesting also that it's imperfect. We're looking at an almost pristine wall. We're looking at a collection of squares and rectangles of latex that have been reassembled, put onto a voile backdrop so that the light comes through them. But it's wrinkled, and it's an amazing kind of collage. And of course it is a conservation process, so the artist has worked collaboratively with huge teams of people to make this happen.
And you can see all of the stonework, can't you? I mean, every sort of facet of this extraordinary and ancient building is mimicked. And in this long, narrow hallway, you can see that conversation between the past and the present. It's an odd thing. It's quite muted. It's quite quiet, actually, despite its scale.
Yeah. And it's something I think that lives in your memory. You go away and you remember the experience. I mean, it's a kind of overwhelming place to come. And as you say, this is a very quiet piece. Despite its size, it sort of whispers at you, not shouts at you. So it asks you to go away and perhaps consider it, to think about how we value our buildings, how we treat them, what we do with pollution, our political decisions, and our personal decisions.
John Ruskin was interested in the moral superiority, really, of Gothic architecture. And this hall really operates as an inspiration for the rest of the Palace of Westminster, which is an ersatz Victorian replica of medieval architecture and of Westminster Abbey. So it really questions our values around architecture, around public space, but I think fundamentally invites us to have this contact with history.
Yes. Yeah, you know, what do we value? What do we preserve? Do we preserve things? Do we preserve everything? How does that work? Who does it? Whose responsibility is it? And how do things look after they've been kind of cleaned and conserved?
And in its sort of restraint, it provides no answers. It's a very kind of withholding piece to some extent. It just plants that seed.
Yeah.
Plants those questions.
Yeah, it's an open question, isn't it? Thank you for watching our film, The Ethics of Dust at Westminster Hall.
If you've enjoyed this film, you can subscribe to the Art Channel by pressing the red button on the screen. You can also follow us on social media, on Twitter and on Instagram.